How fragile all this is. All you'd have to do would be eliminate electricity. No electricity, no lights. You're back to candles and lanterns, campfires and bonfires. Batteries couldn't be recharged. Generators couldn't be refueled because fuel is pumped electrically. So is water, by the way. So no lights, no fuel, no water. Without electricity, all across America, the gates and cell doors of penitentiaries and mental institutions would fly open. Police wouldn't help you. They'd be gone at the first sign of trouble. They'd be home protecting their own families. So would the Army and the National Guard.
Now, didn't Trump just mention this in a speech?
The big problem is we need double the energy we currently have in the United States. Can you imagine? You don't have to hook into the grid, which is old and, could be taken out. If it's taken out, they wouldn't have any electricity.
And now we have another one of his friends literally telling us how and when to prepare.
A couple of things that you need to have on hand would be some type of a water filtration system, a generator, but on top of that, some type of a solar inverter. I would get a Faraday bag to put those generators in, figure out what electronics you think you're actually going to need the most, maybe light, heat, because if the grid goes down, there's not going to be any heat, and it's going to be extremely cold in some places. But another thing people don't think about is tools. Hand tools to be able to increase the infrastructure in your house and protect against the desperation of humanity that's coming.
And when this happens, information is going to be the most powerful resource because nobody's going to know what to do.
Alright, shalom. First and foremost, I'd like to give all praise and glory to Yahweh, Bahasham Yahushai, Bahasham Rakah Kodash. Double honor to the elders and apostles of Great Millstone that rule well. Salutation to the Yaki and preaching the truth to the four corners of youth and sincerity. This is what I'll commentate on another lesson also then be edifying to the spirit. And this lesson really sparked from looking at the elder brother Amawan Gabab posted a video. Right, and it says overnight chaos, if or when. But I understand from this that there are a lot of spiritual things that could come out of this. Because when you look at the clip, you understand that what he's speaking about is the grid going down. For a lot of people who don't know what the grid is basically the infrastructure that delivers electricity to your home or the network. You understand? The internet being connected, everything, electricity in a whole. You understand? The way they distribute electricity to everybody's home, the things that distributes it. So when you understand the grid and you understand some of the things that can make the grid go down, but initially I believe that Esau would throw down his own grid. Because some of the things that could make the grid go down is like what? The weather, EMP, which is an electromagnetic pulse, right? And cyber attacks. And we know cyber attacks has been on the rise in America, right? It has been on the rise and it has been devastating them, because the reason why I say cyber attacks is because when cyber attacks the grid, they realize power outages take place in a certain place or in a certain area. There's power outages, and why this happening? People could do what they want, as the man was going into. Cell doors is open, right? What's the next thing? You don't have no contact with anybody. People are coming to break into your home. So a lot of people who using this electro thing for the breed at their home, they can't use it, and they had to depend on a generator, because if the electricity go out, you can't breathe. You understand? They can't breathe. Some people using these gas machines to breathe with this long ass tube. So that being said, if the grid really goes down and there's a lot of power outages, it is gonna have chaos. You understand? Because what really sparked my interest as well is thinking about the last thing that he said. Let me see if I get that.
How fragile.
Let's bear with me here.
Telling us how and when to prepare.
A couple of things that you need to have on hand would be some type of a water filtration system, a generator, but on top of that, some type of a solar inverter. I would get a Faraday bag to put those generators in, figure out.
Right, so he said to have certain things to have on hand. Generator, like a safety bag and all these sorts of stuff. Now, none of these things ain't bad, right? Well, these things are actually good to have around. And not only before the grid falls, but all now. You understand? You wait till that time comes, it good to have a couple candles, a first aid kit, certain flashlights. Nothing wrong with having these things in your home because it's only common sense. But the major thing is the last thing that he said. Let's play that part.
What electronics you think you're actually going to need the most? Maybe light, heat, because if the grid goes down, there's not going to be any heat, and it's going to be extremely cold in some places. But another thing people don't think about is tools. Hand tools to be able to increase the infrastructure in your house and protect against the desperation of humanity that's coming.
And when this happens, information is going to be the
Right. Desperation. Tools to safeguard the infrastructure, to build on it, to build up, to fortify your window, fortify your doors. Because a lot of people gonna find that the safest place for them when all this shit hit the fan is their home. I'm gonna get some precepts immediately. Alright, this is 2nd Esdras chapter 15 and verse 14. It says, "Woe to the world and them that dwell therein, for the sword and their destruction draweth nigh." Right? And who is coming with the sword? Is Esau Edom. Esau is coming with a sword. And that's what the Lord say, woe to the world. Right? Not the cosmos, but everybody that is dwelling in the world today. You understand? Because what going on is a lot of people has made void the law of Yahweh Hashem Yahushai, as you read in Psalms 119, I believe. Let's get on now, come back to 2nd Esdras 15 and 14. Psalms 119 and 126. It says, "It is time for thee, O Yahweh Hashem Yahushai, to work, for they have made void thy law." In other words, they forget the law. They consider it nothing. They put the Lord's words to naught. The prophets are wrong and they ignore the prophets. The prophets ringing the bell, blowing the trumpet, right? Giving all the warning that trouble is coming. There's a lot of things that gonna cause trouble, and it's written in the Bible. Prophecies yet to happen, but they ignore it. Right? And by ignoring it, it just sealing your feet for sudden destruction. Because when it says it's time for the Lord to work, it does mean it's time to pour out judgment. Scripture says he is the Lord of judgment, and every morning do it, he execute his judgment. He bring his judgment to light. I'll bring that precept after the 2nd Esdras, but we can see the reality. Right? The reality of it all is when there is no electricity. Because even I could attest to this, when I was in the world, and I had certain family members around me or certain friends around me, when electricity is out in the village, they mind and stir up ready to do crime, and happy about it too. You understand? They're happy, they're ready to do crime. Because nobody's seeing them when they come in their house. Nobody's seeing nothing. And that's what we're talking about when the grid goes down. But what if the grid goes down for months? Because chaos is a serious thing. Things that we had to expect certain things. What if the grid goes down for months? Would you feel safe? No having no electricity at all, no light, no nothing, and it's in the night. Think about it. Especially for women. You wouldn't feel safe. That's why I could understand where the apostles come from when they say that a lot of women gonna die. These independent women, these Miss Independent, they want to be by themselves. You understand? When they supposed to be seeking for a man, they don't know. You understand? Why scripture say why we yet had liberty. Right? So going back into it, it says, "It is time for thee to work." It is time for thee, O Lord, to work, for they have made void thy law. It says, "Therefore I love thy commandments above gold, above fine gold." Yeah, we delight to be in the truth and be in the Lord's commandments, because without this, when all that shit happen, you're gonna be, your ass is grass basically. You're gonna be in a pitiful case, as the scriptures say, when we will rejoice in tribulation. So let me get about the 2nd Esdras 15, I'll read over 14. "Woe to the world and them that dwell therein." That's D that's not underneath your house, but shimmy house child protection. For the sword and the destruction joy nigh, one people shall stand up and fight against another, and swords in their hands. For there shall be sedition among men and invading one another. So the last part of the video, what the man said, fortifying your house, your infrastructure to make sure it's strong to prevent against invaders. I wonder if it's invaders, he said. Just bear with me.
We'll get a Faraday bag to put those generators in, figure out what electronics you think you're actually going to need the most, maybe light, heat, because if the grid goes down, there's not going to be any heat, and it's going to be extremely cold in some places. But another thing people don't think about is tools, hand tools to be able to increase the infrastructure in your house and protect against the desperation of humanity that's coming.
And when this happens, information is
Right, so it says to prevent against the desperation. Why people gonna be desperate to get into your house? Not because you are light. You understand? It's because you can't work. So you could put work out of the occasion and put being outside out of the occasion. You understand? Famine is gonna come and a lot of people gonna not have. And because it's dark and your house looking vulnerable, they're gonna come. Right? So I'm gonna read it. I reach. Right? It says, verse 16, for there shall be sedition among men and invading one another. They shall not regard their kings nor princes, and the course of their action shall stand in their power. Let's see. I'll jump to verse 19 straight to the point. Verse 19, a man shall have no pity upon his neighbor, but shall destroy their houses with the sword and spoil their goods because of the lack of bread and for great tribulation. So the place is going to be in great tribulation, chaos, as the scripture reads, gross darkness the people, and also a lack of bread, famine on the land. You understand? When the Lord say you protect us in famine, and my servant shall eat, a lot of people not thinking about people coming in their house. You understand? Because I was by I was by a certain client's house the other day doing a job, and I noticed that in their house easy access to everything. Like they leaving the doors open, the gate open. Somebody could just come in the yard into the house, and everything that's easy accessible. And to myself I was saying, some people not seeing it. They're not understanding that Jacob's trouble is coming. Jacob gonna feel it the most, but everybody's gonna affect everyone. And people, the desperation, as the man rightfully said, the desperation of people, these things not gonna stop them. So they come in armed. In that time it might even have militias, food militias. You understand? Where they're looking for, they join in groups to snatch people food. They create their little groups because they have guns, and they're looking for places where they could snatch people food. Where they could just come and all they're coming for is food and things that they could use. Last days looting. Right? That's the kind of mindset. But knowing Esau will throw down the grid for himself. Starting in America, Esau might throw down the grid for himself because I read out some little things that can destroy the grid. The weather, bad weather temperatures, like if storm come, but they could rebuild that in no time. What was the other thing? EMP, electronic magnetic pulse, right? EMP could play with it as well too, but they could have their technicians onto that, their IT technicians onto that real quick and see about that. But you see, cyber attacks is a serious thing because they are hackers in other countries that well equipped. You understand? And they could really and truly shake up send a powerful cyber attack if necessary. But with Easter being in charge, you could expect anything. Never trust your enemy. Expect him to throw down the grid to get at the order out of chaos. Expect him to create chaos to get people on board to, take that MOTV. For him to bring his solutions, he might do this and then he might say, well, the only way to save this is to send out 4,000 or 400,000 robots into the streets so that the robots could protect the grid and this and that and bring up a certain science, smooth words again. Right? So this video wasn't really intentional to be long as well too. Quick videos. Some videos are shorter than some videos are long. This was a quick edification, Lord's willing. It was edifying to the spirit. Right? I want to say Kalalaya Blah, Alahayanawa, Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahushai, Bahasham, Rakakodash. Double honor to the elders and the apostles of Great Millstone that rule well. Salutation to the Achaean preaching the truth, to the four corners of the earth in sincerity. Shalom, shalom, shalom. And Wabad Babal, Wabad Babal, Wabakariam.